I basically told him that I was going to go completely fucking crazy. And just if we were going to do this, he would have to take the cuffs off and, let the lunatic run around in the asylum for a bit.
What is it that you need in order to know that you can play a part?
It's a great question, and I can answer some of it. There's part of it probably that's just instinct, curiosity, passion. Like, well, let's take Paolo Gucci, for example. I was sent this script to look at a different part. Okay, but when I read this script, I fell for Paolo. And I fell not only for the character that was on the page, but the character that wasn't on the page. So I saw something there that we could build on. And it wasn't all the way there. It was more in the beginning. It was a very beautifully written script. The dialogue was fantastic. But Paolo was more just pure antagonistic. He was a device in the story, more of a villain. But I did see little indications, little opportunities for heart and humor and how we could really magnify those things. So I think with Paolo, the other roles or what was there, I just don't think, I don't think I would have been very good at them, to be honest. And, I enjoy a challenge. I do a lot of rock climbing, right? And, you climb things that are really intense sometimes. They're burly, they're difficult, you're miserable half the time. But there's just such a deep sense of reward and, gratitude that you get after you're done, fulfillment. And the same is true for me with acting.
You surprised Al.
Yeah. Which is a beautiful thing. He just told that story again last night. And I have to say Al is one of my heroes. Like, he taught me what acting could be. Like, how far can you go in, creative ambition? That's Al's work, right? It's always alive and full of passion. So he was telling that story, how he didn't recognize me last night. And I just was, every time he tells it, I'm just floored that it's Al Pacino talking about, the faith that he had in me and, giving me the validation that, of course, you don't seek, but it's certainly nice to get it. And from someone who's meaningful to you, it's even nicer to get it. So, but it's crucial to connect to relate to have understanding or empathy with the other actors and the characters that you're playing. And, as deep as I go in with my roles, and as much as I love transformation and extreme commitment, I mean, for me, it's not extreme. It's kind of a logical commitment. It's also as equally important for me to be available to my other actors, to be kind, to be generous, to be on time, to be mindful and thoughtful about their process as well. But with House of Gucci, I didn't see Gaga or Jeremy Irons. I saw the family. And it was beautiful to get to know them through the character.
It's time to take out the trash.
They're my family.
So am I.
You picked a real firecracker.
Did it matter whether it was you were creating a character that was close to the real one or even looked like the real one? It feels like you created something out of your own imagination in a way.
When I play a real person and bring that life to the screen, I do think you have an obligation to do your homework, to try your best to accurately, represent and bring an impression. You're never going to be the person. It's only going to be, it's a painting, not a photograph, right? And in this case, I had very little source material. So I read every book, every article. Of course, you do all those things. You talk to family and friends and you immerse yourself. But there was a little bit of video of him doing an interview. And he was just so cheeky and naughty, and you could tell like he was taking the piss, and he had a sense of humor. He was a bit wicked, and a bit of a dandy, and it was just enough to stoke my imagination, and I was off to the races. Yeah.
But what about the look? What about the bald skull cap and all of that?
You know, like I said, when I read the script, I didn't know. I read it for I was supposed to look at it for another part. I didn't know what Paolo looked like. I didn't care what he looked like. You know, for me, I really connected with his desire to do something special with his life, to want to contribute in a meaningful way to his family. You know, I'm in a band with my brother. You know, I have a very small, close family, and you know, I want to contribute and be a meaningful member of my family, and to be an artist and be taken serious. All those things are on my mind daily, you know, and I connected with that frustration that he's felt, and you know, it was enough for me to really grab a hold of and run with. And the transformation is, I love that. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. I love Sean Penn. I love those actors that can really show you something, surprise you in a way that's just, you know, to me, it's fascinating. And I love to work that way too. But, you know, the mask it's a mask, you know, and it can disguise, but it can also reveal. It's meaningless though, if you don't have the heart and the soul, if you don't have the spirit, it's nothing. It's just, you know, it's material. If you couldn't tell, I had the experience of a lifetime with this. And, you know, not since Dallas Buyers Club have I really fell so deep into a character in the way that I did here.
How did that manifest itself on a day-to-day basis?
I think it really was the fuel for me to commit in the way that I did, which is slightly unreasonable, probably, and, you know, taxing and brutal, but also beautiful and exciting. And you're really dancing on the edge, especially when you're getting in the ring with Al and Jeremy and Gaga and Driver and most of all, Ridley. I certainly wasn't going to be the one that was going to show up unprepared on that set. So I knew my lines, I knew your lines, I knew the grips job at that point. For me, it was just an opportunity to see what I was capable of and to test myself and to contribute, hopefully, like Paolo, in a meaningful way to this journey.
We're a family.
You'll play that.
Gucci is my name too.
So what did he say when you pitched, and I'm curious to know how you pitched it, your version of the character? Did he just say, go with it?
You know, I think they were kind of like, okay, well, let's, all right, Paolo. And of course, I didn't know anything except what I saw on the page. And then we got on the phone and I basically told him that I was going to go completely fucking crazy. And just if we were going to do this, he would have to take the cuffs off and, you know, let the lunatic run around in the asylum for a bit. And I think it's exactly what he wanted to hear. I feel like he works that way, where he dives in deep. You know, he's so decisive. He loves to work. He loves to work hard. I'd been begging to work with him for like 13 years. I met him in 2003 at the Morocco Film Festival. And I never do this, but I marched straight up to him and I said, if you ever need an extra, you let me know. I don't care what it is. I'm in. And he was very nice and gracious. And over the years, they were kind of, you know, would run into each other and keep touching. Of course, on Blade Runner, Denis Blade Runner, he was on set. So in a way, we kind of worked together. And of course, I was blind on that, so I didn't, thank God, because I didn't have to look at him.
Did you never rehearse this group of people? It feels like everybody came in and surprised the others. And I'm also curious about how you calibrate in a movie like this, where the comedy is and where the drama is.
There is a line. It's a bit of a dance. And I'm always of the belief that there can never be enough comedy. I've been, you know, it's nice to make people laugh because I think I've been making people either scared or cry for years, but, it's great to play with the funny bone a bit. You know, I haven't talked about this much before, but I never rehearse. I'm loath to rehearse. I always, and in these days with technology and digital cameras, I I like to set it up in the very beginning that we film everything because, I love the accident. I often do takes and purposefully break them because I think in those broken pieces, as you put the scene back together in that moment, you find the truth. And I think
how do your directors feel about that?
Ridley loves it. He's rolling, 100 cameras. If he had 100 cameras, he'd roll them all. But there's always at least 4 to 6 cameras rolling. You don't even know where the camera is sometimes. You're like, oh, he'll be like, okay, we're done, moving on. And you're like, oh, okay, well, there you go. So it's exciting. And you don't have that pressure. Typically, if you shoot in a traditional way, you shoot your side and then maybe a wide and then a close up and then you turn around and you shoot the other actor. And, the other actor has got to keep the energy and that spontaneity and that surprise. And especially with humor, it's a beautiful way to work to shoot everything at once. And there's a real art to it. So for actors, it's a beautiful thing, the way that he shoots. And, I love the immediacy. I love the accident. But I also come in, hyper prepared. That's part of my process. And I come in with ad-libs and improvisations ready to go. Of course, things happen in the moment as well, but I have a bag of goodies to experiment with so that there's surprise and discovery on every take.
You're unsettling your co-star. So how did Al handle that?
He loved it. I found like Denzel and Al and Jeremy Irons, he said something last night. I forgot exactly what it was, but it said it woke him up. It inspired him. And that was, again, to hear Pacino say that. And it's a beautiful thing.
Paolo, you are Gucci. You need to dress the part.
It's chic.
I remember when I was on this set with Denzel and then the first day I was there and I was just...
The little things.
Little things. Yeah. Sparma, another
You were
thing.
Great. That was a good one.
You. I would love to do a prequel or something because that character was so fun. But I remember, Denzel, I didn't even have to say anything. I looked at him different and he was on it. He was just so sensitive to every little change. And that first scene, I made a comment, boom, he grabbed it and he went somewhere that I had no idea that he would take it. I said something about going to Disneyland or something silly. And then rather than shut me down and be like, listen, I'm interrogating you, he took it and smiled. And he said, oh yeah, we could do that, Albert. And called me by my first name. And I was like, yes. Sometimes as actors, we can feel like we need to wait to ask permission to do something. And I think it gives everyone permission to experiment and to fail and to try new things. And what else I'm a big fan of, Anne, is I'll take someone who has a day player, and we build on that part. We'll improv and I'll call, I'll ask them a question in a scene. And I think it helps just make everything richer.
I was going to run through some of your characters over time and some of the examples of people who ran with the ball. I would imagine Matthew McConaughey is one of them.
Well, yeah. He's just a force to be reckoned with and was always, it's about being in the moment and it's about listening. And the funny thing that happens, like when you break a scene, is when you're improvising, everyone has to start listening, including you. Because if you throw something out to someone and you start talking, like, for example, if I say, crab cake right now, right? Okay, you have an image of a crab cake. You're like, well, what about a crab cake? And I say, well, I don't eat crab cakes anymore. But I remember when I was a kid, I had this crab cake. It was like one of the best things I've ever had in my life. It was in Ocean City, Maryland. Those things can trigger real experience and you have to listen. But McConaughey, just, a beast.
And what about the Blade Runner one?
Yeah, Neander Wallace. And, when I think about that, I think of Harrison Ford. I had them make eyes for me. First of all, I worked with a beautiful human being, a guy named Chris, who happens to be blind. And I spent time with him and worked with him. And it was really fascinating because, usually we you see a blind person, a lot of times you look away. You don't look into their eyes. We feel like, maybe we shouldn't do that. And there's of course respect, and you want to walk gently. But it was beautiful because I would sit on the couch and I would look, I'd be a foot away from him and I'd look at his eyes. I'd watch his behavior and his movement. I'd talk to him about really intimate things, about his life and his life without sight. And, we actually took his eyes. They made some eyes to be blind, some contacts. But I asked them we took photographs of Chris's eyes, and we painted these beautiful craftspeople, painted these contacts to look just like his eyes. His eyes almost didn't look real because they were scarred from when he was a child. But we took those eyes and they were opaque, so I couldn't see. And on the set, I would have to be led around the set because once they were in, I couldn't see for the day. And it was actually really helpful for me because I never had to act blind. I couldn't see. So with Harrison Ford, I did all those scenes, and of course there was improvisation. There was these long kind of speeches, and it was terrifying because it's Harrison, it's Blade Runner. Of course, should have worn a diaper that day. But afterwards, I was standing on the corner, and it was a set that was surrounded by water, so I had to stay very still. And I went off to the corner and kind of stayed to myself, as I do. But after the scene was done, I felt this person kind of come up to me and grab a hold of me and put me in a really intense embrace. And I could feel that he was moved. He was crying, I thought, and it was Harrison Ford. He got to a place in that scene that was so beautiful that it really just touched him deeply. So that was my experience with him on Blade Runner. And just to clarify, like, Harrison wasn't crying because of me, and he wasn't weeping like a child, but he was very moved. And it was because of that special scene. Certainly he brought out more from me than I would ever bring from him. But what we were talking about is that synergy that happens when you have, people that are both willing to, die for it, in a sense, get in the ring with one another, and what can happen.
Was there a particular role where you learned some of these things, where you figured them out?
I learned a lot from music. I learned a lot from being on stages around the world. There's nothing like having your guitar stop working and then you got to talk to 100,000 people in Rio on stage for 15 minutes and keep them entertained. I also bring people on stage a lot, and that certainly has helped with my skills around improvisation. I've spent a lot of time editing in my life because I'm a filmmaker myself. I do a lot of documentary work, so I've spent time behind the camera. That's been helpful. And then working with, Darren Aronofsky and Fincher and Oliver Stone and Denis and these phenomenal filmmakers like Ridley Scott, that teaches you every time. So
Absolutely.
I always feel like I'm in the right place if I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and I often am the dumbest guy in the room, and that's great by me because I get a chance to learn, and that's where I want to be.
But thank you for opening up for us.
I'm going to blame you for bringing it out, but I love movies like you do, and I appreciate your passion and the time.